Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastep Jr.
Hello and welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. My name is Ralph Eastep. I'm the host of the Ask Ralph Show. And we've been doing this show for a while now, and I would really love to hear from you if this show has made an impact on you, if you've listened to it, if you've learned something from it, or if it's been beneficial to you. Let us know. Shoot me an email at ralph@askralph.com, or even better, call our office. And that's 302-659-6560. And give us some feedback. And if you do that, I'm actually going to give you a $50 gift certificate to having your taxes prepared for this year. So it's worth your while. So go to askralph.com, or you can shoot me an email at ralph@askralph.com, or finally give us a call at 302-659-6560. They tell me people listen to our radio show, and they tell me people listen to our podcast. So I'd really like to hear from you. And you know what? Maybe I'll even put you on the show. One of the questions I do get a lot in my practice is, why should I hire a professional to do my taxes? Well, that's a good question. In my opinion, it's sort of like, well, why do I go to a doctor? Well, because the doctor has the skills to diagnose what's wrong with me. Now, I could go online to WebMD or one of those other places and, try to figure out what's wrong with me. And I guess people can do that with their taxes as well. Go to the TurboTaxes or the H&R Block online or those things, or even, scurry into one of those big box tax stores. But, you get what you pay for. And when you're looking for someone that knows what they're doing, you need to hire a tax professional. All of that being said, I truly believe there are certain people who most definitely need a tax pro. So let's talk about some of those type of situations so you can see if you fit into one of these. Number one is if you have or are starting a small business. There are a great many tax ramifications to having your own business, both on the side of compliance and on the side of reducing your taxes. So that to me is a real no-brainer from the standpoint of hiring somebody. You don't know what you don't know. And that sounds ridiculous what I just said, but you don't. And then what happens is when you try to do it yourself, or you go to one of these websites, you really don't know what you're putting yourself into. Number two is if you have a rental property or you're buying a rental property. These get very complicated very quickly. Now, the idea of a rental property isn't very complicated. You have a property, you put it out there for rent, somebody rents it, they pay you, you have expenses, you have repairs and maintenance, all those sort of things. But knowing how to put that information onto a tax return and the nuances to that are very important. So that's another area where I think you need to hire a tax professional. Number three, you'd like to begin planning for future generations. I'm talking about estate planning here. So let's say that you've reached the point where your returns are maybe not that complicated anymore, but you really want to start thinking about, how do I leave money for my family, either children, grandchildren, nieces or nephews. Dealing with an accountant can definitely help you do that. Not only from the financial perspective, but they also could put you in touch with good estate attorneys who can do your end of life documents, or maybe create some trust or some things like that would be helpful. Number four, if you have material foreign income. This is another one that I think is very important. If you've got any sort of foreign income, you definitely need to hire somebody that understands that so that you don't get yourself in trouble and get yourself a lot of fines for not handling that correctly on your tax return. Number five, if you are or in the past have been subject to the alternative minimum tax, and if you've had this, you know what I'm talking about. I call it the Robin Hood tax. Rob, steal from the rich and give to the poor. It's basically a tax that is assessed on people who have those, quote, tax preference items. So if you're somebody that has had that in the past, or you're going to be affected by that, you need to make sure you sit down with a qualified tax professional and understand the nuances of that, and make sure you're not going to cut yourself short and have some taxes that you're going to pay that you don't need to. Number six, when you're making a big life change like retiring or buying into a partnership. This is a big one. I see a lot of clients who try to do their taxes their first year in retirement on their own, and it becomes an absolute landmine laden field of disaster. This is what I do. This is what tax professionals do. They understand how this works. So it definitely makes sense to hire an accountant to handle that sort of situation. Or, like I said, the other part of that is if you're buying into a business or a partnership, you want to sit down with a tax professional or an accountant or both. Most of us are tax professionals and accountants. You want to make sure you sit down with somebody like myself and go over, what are the expectations of this partnership or this corporation that you're getting involved in? What are going to be your tax concerns? What are the things you need to keep track of? Number 7, when you're unsure whether to accelerate or postpone income. Now, that's a fancy way of saying you've got a decision to make. I had a client in not too long ago that needed to make a decision about taking money out of their retirement plan. And it really made a huge impact on their tax return, whether they do it now or do it after the first of the year. So if you've got a situation like that, that is a great opportunity to come in and meet with somebody like myself and have a consultation and sit down and say, okay, well, we're getting ready to do this. What are our options? Because you can really get yourself into a tax bind if you're not careful about that. Number 8, if you have restricted stock or employee stock options, another area where I see problems. I had a client a couple years ago who worked for one of the home, I think it was Home Depot or Lowe's, and one of the things he got was stock options, and he exercised those options. And he noticed there was something strange on his W-2, but he didn't report it on his tax return. And 2 years later, he gets a letter from the IRS that says, "Hey, pal, you owe us, $4,000 in tax." And he was getting ready to cut him a check, and he said, "You know what? I saw Ralph used to do my taxes. It got real simple, so I started doing it myself." And he sent me over the notice. And I said, "Well, actually, you don't owe anything," and that's because. And it gets complicated, but the IRS only saw the fact that he sold the stock, not that he actually bought the stock and had some basis in it. So if you've got one of those type of situations, definitely you need to talk to a tax pro and make sure you're reporting that correctly, because if you don't, you're going to get one of those nasty grams from the IRS and you're going to get scared because they're going to say you owe us thousands of dollars. Number 9, if you're not sure how much to withhold from your paycheck or pay in quarterly estimates. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, go and meet with somebody and sit down with them and go over your tax situation. They can give you, somebody like myself can give you a roadmap on how to handle things. And finally, a big one, and it's going to be that time here pretty soon. If you've got kids going into or are in college and you've got to do that dreaded financial aid form. And I get a lot of questions about that because it is not a simple thing to do. Now, that being said, there is a way to feed that information in from the IRS when you go to fill that form out, but you have to make sure you file your return early. Otherwise, come to see somebody like myself and we can actually help you understand, what goes on this line, what goes on that line, so that you give your children, or maybe it's even you, the best opportunities to get that financial aid that you deserve. Because if you put something on there wrong, then the financial aid is not going to work out, or maybe you get, aid that you didn't deserve, or you miss out on aid that you could have received. So those are all sort of the top things I talk about in hiring a professional. I personally believe you should always hire a professional to do your taxes. But if you're affected by one of these things, I definitely think it's a no-brainer to do it. So consider us, go to AskRalph.com and see if we can help you out today to save you money on taxes.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware, and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.